To introduce myself, I work for the Welsh Government and I specifically work for the Minister that was talking to you this morning, Edwina Hart, who's our Minister for Business, and as she made clear in her particular speech, is at the Welsh Government we are really recognising that we need to do an awful lot to support growth in the Welsh economy, and that some of our business support services and programmes probably really do need to be modernised and improved. So I in particular run support services and programmes, particularly around what we call supply chains, helping Welsh companies win contracts. That's one of my main areas, and it's the particular area I'm going to focus on in this particular session. I'm going to give a lot of context, which is necessary to explain what we actually do, but I genuinely want to use the session to do a bit of consultation. The fact is we are going to be reforming our services next year through a process of actually redesigning, going out to retendering for those services as well. So just want to emphasise, this isn't a session where we're kind of just going through the motions. We're genuinely interested to hear what people have got to say. So I keep on thinking I'm going to trip over these wires. Right, in terms of specifically what I'm going to talk about, the first thing to do is talk about policy. In other words, I think it's important to take a step back and actually clarify why the Welsh Government is doing anything in this area to begin with. The second dimension I want to focus on is Sell to Wales, which I'm hoping that most of you have, if not all of you, have heard of, which is our national procurement portal. That's our way of supporting and helping Welsh suppliers, if you like, in the online environment. We have a service then that works on the ground called the Supply Development Service. It's a pan-Wales service. Again, we're looking to redesign that service next year as well, so we'll talk about that. I'd like to throw in some examples of how our existing services are helping social enterprises. I'd like to talk about as well, and there's quite a lot of interest in this morning. It's a service that's not run by the Welsh Government, but it's a service that we're working more closely with now. It's a service led by Bangor University, but it's what we call an interreg project. So it's running in conjunction with public bodies in Ireland, and it's a very good service helping small companies improving their ability to tender. So I'll talk about that as well. I'll then take some questions if you've got any in terms of the presentation, and then what I'd really like to get into then is getting your views in terms of how you think the Welsh Government can better support social enterprises in terms of winning contracts. If I then start to take us through the presentation. The starting point really for everything that I do as a Welsh Government civil servant is our government's manifesto, which then has been translated into what we call a programme for government. These are the things that are stated very clear, which you and anybody in the electorate can hold us to, basically. The first thing there, ensure that mutual and cooperative sectors have access to appropriate and robust business advice, which is why we're thinking in the way that we are now. In other words, is the support that we're providing to social enterprises good enough? We don't think it is good enough at the moment. We think there are some parts of it that are good, but we think there's a lot of areas that can be improved. So hence that particular commitment in the programme for government. The second point is there's a recognition across government, and this will probably always be an issue to some extent, that public procurement processes could be simpler, and that very often suppliers out there for various reasons can struggle to tender and to win public contracts. The report that's alluded to there is the Barriers to Procurement Opportunities report, and the first point, which I really think is where the online dimension comes in, businesses being made aware of public sector procurement processes in order to overcome real or perceived barriers. That's one particular issue we need to tackle. And the second point then is the support that we actually put in on the ground, which is through our business support providers, our local supplier champions. In other words, we've got a duty really to help suppliers where they're having difficulty with tender processes, responding to invitations to tender, how can we best go about supporting suppliers to tackle those particular problems. So that's very much the policy context within which we work. In terms of what we're currently doing, we've got this website, Sell to Wales. The positive story on it is Wales is one of those areas actually where Wales was very much in the lead. This site came into existence, I think it was about 8 years ago now, and Wales was very much a first in this area. We're also doing very well in the sense that unlike other parts of, well, certainly unlike England, you know, we have this one site that most public sector buyers are using as well. So again, very, very positive. The negative side to it is that it's not as modern as it should be anymore. Obviously, within 8 years, the online environment and capabilities have moved on considerably. So we are currently going through a project to redevelop and improve this site. But what it currently does, it brings suppliers and buyers together. In other words, if you're a local authority, if you're an NHS body, you'll put your contract opportunity on there. If you're a supplier then, you can put your details on there so that buyers are aware that you exist. They can match you up to some of their contracts. And the final point is an important one as well, is that it doesn't just advertise the large contracts. We're increasingly trying to advertise small contracts on there as well. And aside as well, we are now starting to work with what we call tier 1 companies, trying to work with large tier 1 companies to get them advertising their contract opportunities on there as well. So for example, we've recently had meetings with Horizon, which is a major company that will be working on the Wilver project in North Wales, and we're going to be looking to meet with companies like Fujitsu and BT and actually seeing, we're not saying it's going to come off, seeing if they'll start to increasingly use this portal to advertise their contract opportunities. So again, the whole agenda here is about sort of increasing awareness within Wales. Our suppliers are more aware of contract opportunities, stand a much better chance of accessing and winning contracts. Again, in terms of use, predominantly public sector at the moment. We've got over 400 organisations registered on the site. We've got over 30,000 Wales businesses registered on there. And I think it's the last stat that really says it all, which is, you know, we've had 10,000 opportunities on there since the site came into being, with a total financial value of 30 billion. We'd like to think over the next 10 years, well, I'd like to think actually within a year from now, we'll have more businesses on there, we'll have more buying organisations. The numbers are steadily rising all of the time as well, but I'm hoping with a new site coming into place next year that we'd see a real step change and we get more buyers using it. And I'd particularly like to see more private sector companies coming in and using the portal. And I'd also like to see a lot of smaller contracts being advertised on the site as well. And I think that's particularly apt when it comes to social enterprises, because obviously what I've learned today is, you know, a lot of social enterprises, they're very good businesses, but you know, they maybe want to go for smaller contracts. So I'd like to get more of those going through that site that, you know, social enterprises can go for. In terms, these are really sort of setting up the things you can do on there really. You can promote you know, some of you may be very familiar with this anyway, but if you're a supplier, you can go on there, you complete a profile. Basically, it'll tell a buyer what your business is all about, what you're capable of doing, and then as a supplier, then it's a pretty user-friendly site. And as I say, the new version will be even more friendly. But it works on the basis of what we call CPV codes. So in other words, if say you're a roads engineering business or a tarmacking business, there will be a CPV code that relates to, you know, that specific area, and probably even more specific. You can go onto the site, you can tell the site what type of business you are, and then when you run searches, it'll pull down the relevant contracts for you. And also as well, if you complete your profile, whenever new contract opportunities come through, you'll get an email sent to you telling you, you know, this contract is currently available. So, you know, I'd say it's a must really. You know, any supplier in Wales really ought to be registered on Sell to Wales. The other point then as well, this one, a bit more of a tricky one, but again, if a contract has come up in an area and you know, it's a very large contract, and you're thinking, well, you know, I'm a small social enterprise, it's maybe parks maintenance, some element of parks maintenance, say, maybe it's county-wide, and you think as a social enterprise, well, you know, I can do that work, but I can't cover the entire county area. Maybe, you know, you can go on the site and you could then find out about potential companies that you could collaborate with. The final point as well, of course, is that it's all free of charge as well. I've talked then about the online environment. That's the online support we provide through Sell to Wales, through that website. We also provide a service on the ground called the Supply Development Service. This supports SMEs. Again, it's free of charge. And the crucial point to make here is it's very much open to social enterprises. In terms of what the service does, it's got two dimensions really I like to think about. It's kind of one-to-one support and one-to-many support. So again, if you're a particular, you know, I don't know, you're a packaging and distribution business, and you've been struggling to win contracts, a supplier champion from the Supplier Development Service will work with your business to help you identify potential contract opportunities. And if you're struggling doing tenders, you know, they will help you with the writing of those tenders. Basically, all about enhancing your chances of winning contracts. Sometimes we have specially arranged events as well, and I think it was mentioned this morning. We've got one coming up, for example, very soon in South East Wales, specifically for social enterprises as well. But often events are run around specific contract opportunities. So in other words, sometimes you get very large contracts. We've got a couple, one in North Wales, one in South Wales at the moment, waste-fired power stations. We've got Wilver in North Wales, we've got Next Generation Broadband, and these got very, very long and diverse supply chains. So very often what our Supplier Development Service will do, it'll run events where suppliers will be there and they'll basically say, look, we've got all of these opportunities coming up in the pipeline, and you know, we're willing to support you to sort of become aware of those contracts and to be able to tender. The Supply Development Service also runs events. So this if you like, is the one-to-many events, and you've probably heard of this to some extent. They run how to tender workshops. Again, the point I was, you know, we often get told that, you know, you may have a company, their specialism, so it's, you know, we take an engineering company. You know, engineering is a specialism. There's no reason why they should have a flair for producing tenders. And yet we all probably know, you know, from those of us that have kind of worked, you know, either evaluating tenders or compiling tenders, it really does sort of require quite a skill set in order to actually accurately respond to what's been asked for and to provide the right information. So what this service does, if you're that engineering company, you're very good on engineering, but you're not so good at the paperwork and doing the tendering, is that you can go to that workshop and they will provide a lot of practical help on how to produce effective tenders. The Meet the Buyer events, I've talked about those to some extent, but there's been a large focus here, particularly with local authorities. So very often what will happen is in many areas, the Supplier Champion will go and they'll have good contacts in some local authority areas, and they'll identify opportunities coming through and inform suppliers about that. What I will say on the Meet the Buyer events, having come into the particular post I'm in a few months ago, you know, I think the events can work, but I think that there's real scope for improvement there, and I think they need to be much more targeted, because I think suppliers can often resent being dragged to events where, you know, it might be some months or some long time before opportunities become available. I think very often, talking to suppliers, they want to be engaged when there are specific opportunities about to become available. So I think that is one area that we're definitely looking to reform. The final point then is Sell to Wales workshops. Again, consistent feedback we get, particularly from micro businesses, is sometimes they can struggle with working in an online environment, doing tenders online. For those of us that probably work in offices and work for organisations, local authority, government or whatever, then it comes as second nature to us. But I don't know, if you're kind of running a taxi firm or something, or running a garage and you want to tender for a contract, again, you know, you may not be brilliant on PCs, and why should you be? So again, what we're doing there is we're helping people with the practical skills of how being able to tender online. Coming to social enterprises, our services already very much support social enterprises. As I've mentioned, I think, you know, we really need to sort of up our game in this area. The Minister is very committed, as our programme for government makes clear, to providing a high level of support for social enterprises. But we're doing quite a bit already. We've got over 400 social enterprises registered on Sell to Wales. and I think the challenge is for that figure to become far higher and relatively quickly. In the last 3 years, we've assisted 125 social enterprises. They make up 3% of the businesses that we've supported. And we are running, increasingly how to tender workshops geared specifically for social enterprises. But my own view is, and I know the Minister would share this view, that's not really enough. We really are keen to sort of better support the sort of social enterprise movement, and with that in mind, I'd like to think that, if I was doing this presentation in 2014 or 2015, the numbers you'd be looking at there would be far, far higher. Examples of support, I'm not going to talk about these at any length. As I said, my particular role I came into 3 or 4 months ago. I've not had much contact in this particular context with companies on the ground yet. These are a couple of examples anyway that I don't know personally, so I'm not going to talk about them that much. But I think what they do is that they illustrate the value of our supplier champions. They've gone in, they've worked with these particular companies to help them win contracts. I'm a bit sceptical sometimes in terms of the way we record outputs, and I'm not naive enough to think that one of our interventions, one of our champions coming in has necessarily been the reason they've got the contract. But I think the research and evaluation on services does show it does make a significant difference. In other words, when we send in support and they work with social enterprises and any other type of businesses, those businesses stand a far greater chance of winning contracts. This goes off for a little bit of a tangent, really. We also recognise that for a lot of public sector procurers, they really want that assurance that the organisation that's going to win a contract has got modern and compliant equality and diversity policies and practices in place. So we provide a specific, it's obviously a smaller service around employment and equality. So in other words, if you're looking to tender and you're thinking, sugar, I haven't got, an equality and diversity statement, I haven't got proper workplace practices in place, this particular scheme can provide support in that area. Moving on, this is the service I mentioned. You can gather on the right hand side there. This isn't a Welsh Government service. In fact, it's one of the rare occasions where actually I don't think our logo is even at the bottom, so I don't think we put any funding into this at all. But in the spirit of working in partnership, I'm doing a lot of work. The project itself is called Winning in Tendering, which is what we call an interreg project, which mainly operates in West Wales and most of North Wales. But what I specifically... Yes, of course you can, yeah. What I specifically want to talk about on this particular project is something called the Tender Review Service. It's a very, very useful service, and I think it can very much complement the Supply Development Service. What it is, it's a service where if an SME is maybe consistently not winning contracts, but they actually show a lot of potential, they've got the ability to grow, then what this service will do, they'll provide one-to-one support where they'll go in and work with the company and actually identify the reasons why they're not winning the contract. And having spent quite a bit of time now with this project, I've been very impressed indeed, and you can see some of the unique features of the service there. It's not one of these kind of awful sort of generic services where they'll just give you some sort of bland advice. They really, I've looked at a few of the reports they've done for small companies, and it's very much geared towards that company. So again, one of the examples I looked at recently was a company in North Wales that does a lot of tarmac and other road surfacing work, and they'd failed a few times to win contracts. And basically the service had gone in and really identified some fundamental things every time that this company was making a mistake. They weren't looking clearly enough at what the buyer was looking for. And again, I can't remember, I think it was around sustainability. They were totally misinterpreting the meaning there. So really simple things that this service spotted, and they're going to be in a much better position in future to actually win tenders. And again, you know, very, very good reasons for taking this support up. It's a fairly small scheme, and it does operate within a pretty, well, I was going to say narrow. It's not narrow. It only operates in certain parts of Wales. As you can see, it operates in most of North Wales, in Ceredigion and Pembrokeshire, Carmarthenshire, and it operates over into Swansea Bay as well. The service, the reason I'm giving it, you know, something of a plug today, is the service is looking to ramp up next year, and they are very keen to take a large proportion of social enterprises as well. So I would strongly advise, if there are any social enterprises that you're working with in 2012, where you think, well, that this company is good, we don't understand why they're not winning contracts. They've got all the ingredients really to be successful and to grow, but they obviously need some sort of deeper advice on tendering them. Then my advice really would be to refer them to this service. It's not guaranteed. There are criteria that have to meet, but I think that the particular level of support you'd get here would be very much worth following that through. So coming on to what I said at the start, really, this really is. I keep on thinking I'm going to trip over this thing. I really genuinely want to use today, and we had an awful lot of feedback this morning. I was overwhelmed, and it really overran this morning. Like the Minister said this morning, we are looking to continually improve the support services we offer, and procurement is an absolute key area for us. We know moving forward that we really have to sort of enhance the capability and the capacity of SMEs and social enterprises in Wales to win contracts. So in many ways it's very timely having a new Minister, in the sense that, as it would happen, most of our services, we are at a genuine point of needing to redesign and improve anyway. For example, our Sell to Wales website, like I said, I think it was a first for Wales. It's got high levels of usage, but it needs to be much improved and modernised. And we're looking, hopefully, to have a new website in place, hopefully by autumn of next year. So again, very keen to get people's views on that. The Supply Development Service, there's a paragraph there. Hopefully you're all familiar with the service, or most of you are familiar with the service to some extent. We've had an evaluation done on the service, and it says it's a good service. It's achieving its European outputs. Companies are winning a lot of contracts through it. It's good job creation through it, but it can improve. And specifically, what's being said is we could do more with social enterprises. So again, I'm not an expert on social enterprises. Most of you in the room probably are. So what I need to know is, well, if we're going to set up, if you like, a sub-service within the Supply Development Service on social enterprises, what should it be doing? What is the type of support social enterprises need? Why are they different to mainstream businesses? What are the specific areas where they're going to need help? Because I haven't got the answers to that. I'm a fairly generic civil servant, so I'm going to really look to you guys for the knowledge and the expertise to help us on that. And again, making clear how genuine all of this consultation is, we will be retendering for that service next year. A new service will come into being in 2012. It will look, I suspect, very different from the service that we've got today. So again, we'd like some good consultations, some good feedback to kind of help us inform that service redesign. And just to emphasize really the genuinely consultative nature of the way that we're going forward. I've got meetings scheduled in the very near future with the Wales Co-op and with the Welsh Social Enterprise Coalition as well. So just want to demonstrate is that, as a Welsh Government, we're genuinely in listening mode in this. And partly because I think we recognise we don't have all of the answers. So very much, welcome your feedback. So at the start of the session, I mentioned I generally wanted to do some consultation, and in fact, I think what I'm going to do, we didn't do it this morning because we ran out of time, but I think I'm going to do it this way this time. What I want us to do, it's my clumsy attempt at some images up there. The first one is meant to represent barriers. So I want us to think about what are the barriers to social enterprises winning contracts. And the second point is, it's kind of getting over the barriers. So what I'd like us to do is maybe if we can break up into groups, and I'll literally give you 10 minutes and I'll get each group to quickly feed back. What I'd like each group to think about in the first 10 minutes is, what are the barriers? What, social enterprises keep on repeatedly telling us, for very good reasons, we are struggling to win public sector contracts. So what I'd like to explore with you is, and for you to tell me, what are those reasons? So if I split you up, well, before we go into that, sorry, are there any burning questions before we split up into groups? Oh, it's quiet. There we are. So if I split you up into groups, maybe each group can try and think of 5 key reasons then. What are the 5 key barriers? And then what we'll do in the next little breakout then is we'll talk about ways of overcoming those barriers. So I'm just going to break us into groups of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you guys in the back row, you happy to sort of huddle together? And so the 5 key barriers, why are social enterprises not winning contracts? Yeah, well, yeah, just huddle together. I'll let you kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 here. And I tell you what, a group over there. There we are, 3 groups. So all together, what are those barriers? You can. I'll give you 10 minutes, so till 25 to, and you can nominate someone in your group then to feedback.